after the really uplifting session of music, I'm going to take you right down to the bottom of the ocean and probably take you down morally too, because it's not actually great news. But first, we're going to look at, basically, we're going to just give a little bit of perspective. This is the planet as we know it, with the oceans representing about 75% of the planet. That's when we think flat, that's when we think 2D. And this is when we think 3D. The oceans represent 99% of the planet. And this is exactly to scale. So the oceans have been, for long, completely unknown. They've been basically looked at in detail by man since about the 60s. And basically we've sampled 0.5% of that surface, and that's about the size of Alaska. So this is really a last frontier, as you would call it. So one of the questions that arises, obviously, is how are we going to approach this? Are we going to be smart about this? Are we going to be better? Are we going to do better about the deep ocean? Because there's a lot of things down there for us to be smart about. I'm going to first introduce myself a little bit because I'm not a scientist, and I'm talking about something that's actually quite scientific. So I'm going to introduce myself briefly, and then we're going to look at potential threats that weigh on the oceans, deep oceans. Then we're going to spend a little more time on bottom trawling, because that's really quite concerning. And then we're going to try to think if there's any justification for that, and then look at what's done. And eventually, what can be further done. I'm going to make a little bit of a personal statement at that stage. So how this whole thing started for me, how I even got involved in the deep ocean. It all started for me, I came from, I'm just going to have basically a slideshow, I think, run. Yeah. It started at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in 2001. I was scouting for locations for a film that I was producing, and they were hosting an amazing show called The Mysteries of the Deep, and it was pretty much the first time ever that anyone had done anything in the deep sea. And over there in Monterey Bay, there's a research institute called the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. And some of you who maybe were here 2 years ago may have listened to Marcia McNutt, the CEO of MBARI. And MBARI is really quite an exceptional institute because they do have a canyon, a very deep canyon that cuts across the continental shelf right there, and that goes all the way down to 4,000 meters. So they're basically the only research institute in the world that can dive down every day to 4,000 meters. They were founded in '87, and they've discovered so much stuff that was really amazing. So anyway, in that, at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, they had this amazing show showing this type of animals, and the film just really blew my mind away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Seriously, at first, I thought it was like 3D stuff. So I said several times in a row, and then I realized it's not 3D, this is real. And I was doing wildlife and scientific films, so I thought I had a pretty good culture of, animals and stuff. And I realized, not at all, So I thought they were aliens. I couldn't believe that. So I went around. I'm pretty talkative in the first place, but I became very talkative then. I went back to friends. I was like, did you see? Did you see? Everybody. I talked to everyone, and people had not ever heard that there was life in the deep seas. Even people who liked, marine stuff and who liked scuba diving or whatever. They had never heard of that. So I was like, okay, we've got to tell the world this stuff exists, So I decided to, get into this, and so I made a book, and I made documentaries, and I'm curating an exhibition at the Natural History Museum in Paris, which is opening in a month, so I'm pretty, it's like a bit of a stressful time right now. But in any case, in doing so, and finding out about these beautiful animals, because my first attraction to them was really aesthetic. I was so blown by their difference and, their gelatinous aspects and octopus with ears and all that stuff. So that kind of stuff, like ghost sort of octopus and whatever. And so I was very attracted to that, aesthetically. But then I found out that going deeper, like doing the book and stuff, I realized that these deep sea ecosystems are actually already, under threat. I mean, it's not as if it was perfectly fine. They were completely remote. Because the thing with the deep sea is that you may think, because it's so remote, it's so out of sight that it's easily out of mind. because it's remote horizontally, because it's usually far from our coast. I mean, Mbari and the Monterey Canyon are really just an exception. Usually you have to go over the continental shelf for some distance before you really hit the depths. So once you've done that distance, horizontal distance, then you also have to do the vertical distance. So I'm going to skip through these, actually. Sorry about making it a bit faster, but we never managed to change the run time, so otherwise I'm going to outrun my time. So anyway, this was really just became pretty much of an obsession to really talk about everything and to make the world, know about these creatures. So obviously the threats that we have, that we can actually, impose on the deep seas, we don't need to be physically directly there to really be a problem for the deep sea environments, because obviously we now know that everything is linked. And for example, we've discovered that whale carcasses, like whales, once they die, they drop to the bottom of the oceans. 90% of them actually drop to the very, very deep oceans, and they give food to a whole suite of animals for up to 100 years. So that gives you, if you remove whales from the surface oceans, you're really depriving a whole bunch of animals from, their potential food source. So you can impact the deep sea by just not being there. But obviously now there's no dredges or wires or cables or trawl nets or whatever that can't access those depths. And for example, when you look at oil extraction, now they're doing this, extracting oil from the oceans at 2,000 meters depth really currently all the time, and now tomorrow they're going to do 3,000, and in the future they're going to go all the way down to 7,000 meters. We'll get the last drop of oil that there is on this planet anyway. So potential threats, I'll just go over them really quickly. There's deep sea mining. We could talk about this for a while, but I'm afraid I'm just going to quote them. Deep sea dumping, we have a waste management problem, being such a growing world population. It's very tempting to take the oceans as a big dump site, so there's studies and stuff, we're thinking about this. CO2 sequestration, of course, we have, a problem with carbon dioxide, so also we're thinking maybe we can play with the oceans and see if we can maybe just pump it into its liquid form into the ocean and see what it does. It's not great, what we've found so far, but anyway, that's still a plan. Ocean acidification, which would be one of the chemical changes that, would be triggered. Methane, of course. Methane is a big thing because there's basically there's more methane in the ocean, twice more methane in the ocean as there is like oil and coal combined. So it's really very tempting to, use this methane that's just there for us to pick up and harvest. The problem, of course, it's a greenhouse gas. And so this is all just potential. I mean, we're thinking these are avenues. They're being looked into, and it might be a little bit of a tic-tac bomb that's going to blow in our face, but at this stage, it's not underway. What's really underway is bottom trawling. That's not a threat. That's a very, very tangible, impact that's already underway. So we're going to look at bottom trawling a little bit more in detail. That's how it works. It's a huge net. It's 60 to 100 meters opening. You've got steel doors on each side. So that's the size of a soccer field, by the way. So you've got like 5-ton doors on each side, and you go over the oceans and you just take everything that there is. It doesn't discriminate between target and non-target species. So you'll just take everything that there is. By definition, bottom trawling is, really high, like a very huge destruction potential and obviously huge bycatch figures. In the past, bottom trawling was just limited to continental margins, but the thing is, we've overexploited all the continental margins of all the oceans. So right now we're thinking, well, since we've done all this with overfishing, because this is one of a quote that explains what's going on with overfishing, we've declared war on fish. And we've won it. So basically, in the past 50, 60 years, what's really changed is that we're using spin-off technology from the military and the Cold War and the World War II to apply it to fishing fleets. So they've become so performant, and they are so good at, locating this single school of fish or whatever, that there is no chance that these poor fish are ever going to make it. Like, this is a totally unfair game. So yeah, acoustic sonars, GPS satellite, that's the type of spin-off technologies that we're using. So fish have no chance. And actually, it shows in results, you know, like catches have multiplied fivefold since the 1950s and the 1990s. But as a result, we have world fisheries. There are huge crises and have been declining since the 80s. And we